Welcome back, my friends, to the InObscuria podcast, a podcast where we exhume obscure rock and punk and metal, and we put them in one of three categories: the lost, the forgotten, or the should-have-beens. This week, I am called Kevin Williams, and across from me, a man who is called Robert Harrison.
I've been called a lot worse.
You have been called much worse.
Probably recently.
I've called you much worse.
Yeah, that's true. We've got that documented.
Well, what is up with you, sir?
Oh, nothing. My apologies for the smell of my house.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I've been huffing paint for a while.
Well, it's a mixture of peppers and paint, which is an odd mixture when you get down there.
Sounds like a 90s alternative album
Peppers
title.
and Paint.
Peppers and Paint.
Yeah, I was in the workshop before you came over doing some things and painting some stuff because it's raining outside, but thought I had set up proper ventilation to exhale all those fumes into the outer reaches of the backyard and did not. It came upstairs and it had wafted up there and it really messed up the beautiful aroma of my stuffed peppers that I made for dinner tonight. The peppers that I personally grew.
Ooh.
In a garden. And then I forgot about them. I walked outside and went, oh, that's right. I planted peppers. Look at that. So it was a nice surprise. I made them. They were delicious and then I ruined it. Now it smells like red spray paint.
What do you call the garden out there? You have a name for it.
Garden of Eden.
Garden of Eden.
Yep.
Nice.
It's about the corniest thing I've got in this house. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've seen that somewhere before.
You see what I did with that?
I see what you did there. Yeah. I kind of got it.
Sorry. So what episode are we on today?
Well, I thought we'd try 94 again.
Again. We did so good at it. Actually, we did not. So I'm kind of glad. I wasn't on my A game. That was about a C- game for me last week. I don't know what it was, but so I'll get a chance to redeem myself.
Well,
why are we doing that?
Yeah, I was going to say, let's hope you didn't plan for this event to happen, but I don't think so because it happened in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah, so you're all excited to go on this road trip, play some shows up north. Not that that's that far north, but from here it's up north.
It was 6.5 hours north.
That's up north. That's the frozen tundra. Is there snow on the ground yet?
It was 91 degrees. Yeah, so I drove up Saturday morning.
Let's talk about the good stuff first.
To play a gig with my band, The Swear. First time we had played a show, I believe, since 2018, perhaps.
Took a little break.
We had recorded in 2019, right before the pandemic, and then we decided to release an album in July of 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So, just great timing from our band. That kind of the way things have always gone for us. But yeah, my band, The Swear, we played an opening spot in Cincinnati, Ohio, and the show was great, man. The venue was cool. It was the Ludlow Garage. It was a very famous venue that has been completely refurbished. The Almonds played there. I mean, everybody you could name from back in the day, classic rock-wise, has played at this place or recorded there, or, it's got a lot of history. And then I think it sold, and I think it sat for a while, and then somebody bought it, and they've completely redone it, and sounds amazing.
You played on the same stage as the Allman Brothers.
I did.
Nice. That's some street cred right there.
Yeah, so it was pretty cool. And, the way this works for opening bands is you're given a time, you show up, you try to find someplace to park, and you load in. And for us, because I came from Atlanta, the rest of the band were coming from Nashville, I drove separately, and I found a parking spot literally 50 feet from the door where I loaded in.
Yeah, that's where they put the handicap parking.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was, it was good proximity to load in. And when I load in, I open the back of my SUV, and I'm unloading all my stuff, and I've got heavy gear, and I'm going from point A to point B and then back, and thought nothing of it. There was really nobody. It was in an back alley. There was really nobody back there. There was some other venues, stores, that was the back of those stores in the back of this venue. We loaded in and didn't think anything of it. Played a great show. Mr. Bill Elam showed up.
Oh, nice.
Hung out with us and saw us live. And
good to see a familiar face.
Yeah, it was awesome. Came and talked to us afterwards. I remember we talked about it at the Rockin' Pod, but we talked about Angela Lisi, who was Jack's Hollow's manager and drummer. She played drums for us. Fantastic. We did it as a trio. First time the Swears ever played as a trio, to my memory at least, I believe.
You don't split the money as many ways. That's nice.
Oh yeah, all that cash was just rolling in. We bankrolled.
Suitcases.
Oh, yeah, it was crazy. So anyway, after the gig, and we're opening for David Cook. So that's the other kind of interesting thing here is David Cook was an American Idol winner, and and he's been releasing albums, I don't know, for probably a good 10 years and, been on major labels, been on, I think, some independents and still out there doing it. And he was great, man. He was a super friendly guy. His band, they were all great, all Nashville guys. And his crowd are mostly, I wanted to say it was an older crowd, but then I realized, like, no, it's not really an older crowd. It's just we're older now. So it's our age group.
Very, very young. Very young at heart.
It was our age group of a crowd, mostly women, which makes sense because David Cook was on American Idol.
Nothing wrong with that.
And I thought, oh my God, we're going to melt faces. I just didn't know because he rocks, but he's kind of more on the pop side.
Suburban rock, like it's soccer mom rock.
It's pop rock. I mean, it's good. I actually got into some of his songs. I really liked them, but I just didn't know what to expect, and we didn't make anybody leave that I could see.
That's good.
That's always
a positive is when the audience actually just stays.
Oh, I've played gigs before where I've cleared rooms.
Yeah, we cleared a whole brewery out that one time.
Yeah, we've cleared rooms, and this was not that, so I was thankful. We did walk out, and it was just silent as silent could be, and the lights on the stage made it so you couldn't see anything outside.
You don't know if there's 2 or 200 people.
And so I just kind of looked up, and I put my finger to my mouth like, shh, and then all of a sudden people started erupting in laughter and claps and all that. And I was like, oh, there are people out here.
Good.
And that's when I heard, Kevin Williams! And it was Bill Elam.
Shh.
But anyway, the show went well. We didn't melt faces quite as much as I thought we would. Great reception, had a lot of fun. It was great to be back on stage. It was a little weird to be back on stage because everybody's masked up, and it's just different. It's a different experience now. It's just the way it is. So I load my stuff back in my car, lock it. Okay. The end of the night, I'm standing by the merch stand, and I get the merch, and I go out to my car. It's time to leave, and I notice that my water bottle is on the pavement because I walk around to the passenger side of the car where I'm going to put in the merch, and I noticed that the water bottle is on the pavement. I'm like, that's odd. I know I didn't drop that. And sure enough, I opened the car and I realized that at some point during the night, and I'm thinking it was either when I was loading in or when I was loading out, that the 50 feet where I'm going back and forth, somebody seized the opportunity to do a very quick, they didn't have to smash and grab because nothing was smashed. There was no sign of any, forced entry into the car. They just seized an opportunity to get one over on me while I was loading in or loading out. And so I noticed all the stuff in my middle console had been rummaged through. There was a credit card sitting on the seat. I keep a credit card in the console. They didn't take that. And I'm looking through and like all that's in our middle console are pens, a tire gauge, and a lot of masks. And they were just strewn all over the place. Yeah, tissues, like normal stuff, right? And it's just strewn all over the front of the car, which I didn't see earlier because I wasn't in the front of the car. I was only in the back. Or it could have happened again when I was loading in. But I didn't see anything missing. And the fact that credit card was sitting there, I'm like, why didn't they take the credit card? And I thought, oh, well, maybe they took a picture of it. So I'll just cancel the card and no big deal. Couldn't find anything missing. Got all the way back to my hotel and I'm like, what could they have taken? And then I realized I had stuffed my laptop. And we have a laptop with all of our podcasts on it. Everything that we do, we record on a laptop, and I had taken the laptop and the extra hard drive that has all the music on it with me because I thought if I have some downtime, I'll just go ahead and do some editing while I'm waiting to go on stage. Well, that didn't come to fruition because we were right up against the wire with loading in and getting sound checked. So I had put my laptop bag underneath, my backpack was underneath the front seat. That's what they got. So they got they got 2 nice pairs of headphones. They got my external hard drive with all my music on it, and they got my laptop with our podcast. So that is why, folks, we didn't have a podcast last week.
And if you hear of another podcast that sounds like InObscuria, that's a bogus.
If somebody edits the episode and puts it up.
That's completely bogus. That's not really us doing that. So let's just go ahead and get that out there in case they do a really crappy job of talking about obscure bands like Rush and Pink Floyd.
So some dumbass out there. So, of course, I took Monday off, and I spent all day basically getting new passwords for everything I could imagine, any financial stuff I had.
I would be so lost.
The good thing is, thank God for the cloud. Thank God for OneDrive.
So you had backups.
Yep, I have everything was saved to OneDrive in the cloud for me, and I got a new laptop that we're recording on today, and I'm able to access everything except the only thing that didn't save was that recording that we did last week. And I don't know why that is. Everything else was in the folders. But for some reason,
to the ether world.
I guess I shut it down before it could do the backup. And I had not opened that laptop since we recorded. So that's why.
Well, we're going to just, like I said, I remember everything we talked about word for word. So at some point, we're going to just...
It'll be so genuine.
Yeah. I'll just repeat everything that I said. But no, the reality is I could do the show the next morning and it would be a completely different show
Right.
because Mr. Short-Term Memory over here.
Well, here's
it's like
what
it's a prelude to having Alzheimer's because it's like brand new every time. I'm like, oh, this is great. Oh, that's right. We have talked about this.
So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to save all the show notes that I had from last time, and we're just going to resurrect that sometime down the road.
When we feel like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just wait a minute. And that way it'll be fresh and it'll be like I've never done it.
Because I have some other things planned coming up that's just not going to fit in for a little bit. So we'll revisit it. By the time we revisit it, you will have completely forgotten. So
3 hours.
It will be fresh when we get to it.
I don't know what I had for lunch today. It's just great. Everything's brand new as you go through life. Oh, that's great. I've never seen that before.
You're like a fish.
Yeah, it's about every hour and a half cycle. Yeah, give me about an hour and a half. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Look, a red car. Oh, that's mine.
All right, so this is our second attempt at episode 94.
Son of a bitch.
Ronnie James DOG is ready, apparently.
He's doing so good.
What are we doing, man?
What are you doing over there?
What are we doing?
You just want to bark?
He's going to give us the episode.
Okay. Oh, is that it?
What is it? Say it again, bud. Oh, yes?
Yeah, that's it. One word?
Come on.
Oh, shit. Here he comes.
Yeah, I need more. Give me more. And? Oh, okay. All right. I think I got it. So, yeah, well, okay. I got it, man.
Everybody's a critic.
Jeez. I'm going to tell him. Okay, well, I got what he was telling me.
Yeah, you and him worked on this earlier.
We did. We have a thing. This is episode 94. Thank you again, Ronnie James DOG. I already knew that, but I'm
he was
glad
just
you said
reminding
it.
us because you lost some information. He's concerned about that.
I'm glad he said it 3 times.
Yes.
But I did catch that he said this is going to be another episode of Shredding the Tomb.
Ooh.
However, what I heard was this episode is
How low can you go?
Oh, that's what bark.
That was the bark. So today, we'll be talking about shredders, but we're talking about bass players.
Oh, yeah. I know so much about that.
This is my episode. Yes, we are going to be talking about the amazing bass players, and a lot of these guys we're going to talk about today are not that obscure. So
yeah,
I'll have to put my spin on it and maybe play something that's a little more obscure from these people. But me being a bass player, even when I wasn't a bass player, I always pay attention to the bass guitar. That's always been my favorite instrument.
Right. And we've talked about how 80s bass playing was the easiest gig in the world for most 80s hair bands and things like that, because what was it?
The root note eighths.
Eighth. Dun, 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 dun. I mean, I could have done that. I wouldn't have looked as good as those guys, but I could have done that. But good bass players, those are the guys that make it happen.
This is Shredding the Tomb, man. So we're just gonna jump into my number one favorite bass player of all time. Who? Tell me who it is.
Does it involve potted meat?
We're going to get to him.
Oh, okay.
We're going to get to him. No.
Oh, no. I actually have to think now. Your favorite bass player of all time, not Roger Waters.
Nope.
The guy from Yes. Not Squire. Oh, damn it.
You can't remember his name. Chris Squire. That is.
Well, no, I was remembering the name, but I was like, no, that's a guitar player.
Well, he's my second favorite. So who's my favorite bass player of all time, man? This should be easy for you.
Oh, Gene Simmons. What am I talking? Oh, my God. Of course it's Gene Simmons.
You got that wrong, too.
I was saying, he's not really a shredder.
Right. He's not a shredder. I do love Gene.
Yeah, you do.
I do love his bass player, but no, is a Canadian guy that I like quite a bit.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Robert E. Lee.
Yes, we're talking about
Lee.
Geddy Lee.
Yeah, I should have known that.
Yes, and if you don't know who he is, or if you
I think of him more as a keyboard player.
He's a singer keyboardist.
Keyboardist. He's a lead singer. He's a front man.
Bass is third.
Of course, he's an amazing bass player.
Of course, he's just my guy.
The fact that he can play those bass lines and sing at the same time, mad credit for that.
And play keys with his feet.
Okay, I didn't know what he's playing that with.
The pedals. And
I don't want to ask what he's playing that third.
Mr. Johnson? Yeah, so Geddy Lee, man. If you don't know who Rush are, then you're probably listening to the wrong podcast. You need to go dive in somewhere else or listen to rock radio. How about that?
Well, you need some remedial podcasting before you come back to us.
However, I will say we did episode 11. We did a Rush special here at InObscuria. That was when Neil Peart passed away, and we played some more obscure instrumentals and more obscure music from Rush. So you can go back and listen to that, but I'm not going to go into the history of Rush because there's a whole lot out there.
You know you want to.
Yeah, well, we don't have that.
We can do an offshoot, like a spinoff of just
Rush.
Scuria.
We're just doing Scure. All right, well, let's talk about Canada's finest export, Rush. And like I said, hands down, my biggest influence on bass playing, not so much the way I play, but just when I think of the instrument itself, he's the first guy that pops into mind, along with some of these other guys you've mentioned, which we will get to. But he's the number one. He's just the ultimate bass player to me. And again, he's just edging out the guy we're going to talk about after this, who we've already mentioned. And he actually released one solo album. Did you know this?
No.
Yeah, so all those Rush albums.
I've never heard of solo albums.
He's done some project stuff like where he's played on a song
one-off
here or
songs.
there.
I mean, the Take Off, the Great Wide North.
Exactly. We played that.
Bob and Doug McKenzie.
That's right. And you can go back to episode 11 and hear that. And yeah, so in the year 2000, he put out a solo album. I think he was wondering maybe if Rush were done at that point because there were some things going on with Neil. And so he put out an album called My Favorite Headache. And it's pretty cool because it's not too far removed from Rush, because if you think about Rush, again, he's singing, he's playing bass and keys. So the only thing left is guitar and drums, right? So he kind of is the
driving force
of Rush up front. But what he did on his solo album was he multi-tracked some basses. So you don't get that on Rush albums, So you've got multiple layers of bass, and the arrangements are a little bit different than, say, what Lifeson or Peart would have done with them. So let's jump into a little My Favorite Headache from 2000, my favorite bass player of all time. And here he is just kind of showing off a little bit. This is called Home on the Strange.
Got eyes like an outlaw.
All right, was that him playing tambourine?
I think that was him. Yeah, had to be.
Multifaceted.
With his feet.
Probably so, yeah. It's a couple of things, not a couple of things, like 20 things. That riff at the beginning and the middle, I don't think I heard the song before you and I recorded a song called Waterfall. Uncomfortably close to what Geddy wrote for that song.
Interesting.
I'm worried about a lawsuit now because, we made so much money off that he's going to come looking for us sooner or later. But anyway, so I'm kind of happy that when you hear something that reminds you of something and it reminds you of your own song, you're like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Right.
So we're, the keyboard to the bass thing was reminding me of when Eddie picked up the keyboards and would go back and forth, and how his keyboards were more just continuations of his own leads, and Geddy's was more atmospheric. He had a lead in Subdivisions, and I'm sure a couple other songs, but even those leads were very
Tom Sawyer's got that
but still rhythmic leads.
Right. Yep.
And I love that. And I think that's one reason I love Subdivision. I'm one of the weirdos that that'll be my favorite Rush song because of the keys that just give a layer to that song.
I love Red Sector A. That is all.
That's another one too.
All keyboard.
Yeah, and so I know Rush purists eschew that. So they eschew that. I'm getting into a realm where I'm saying words that I don't know how to.
You're
pronounce
making up
them.
words over there.
No, there's a word. There's a word. I'm going to look it up. I'll come back later. Anyway, so that realm of that more atmospheric Rush songs, those are the ones I gravitate to. But I know a lot of purists just only had the first 3 albums, I think.
Did you notice the double bass? You had multiple bass layers on there.
There's like tracks. And I mean, it doesn't quite rival Spinal Tap with like 4 basses at the same time.
I thought about playing Big Bottom tonight, but I decided not to. I decided that would be a little too obvious.
How do you choose which bass player from that one?
Yeah, well, Derek Smalls is really, really it. But moving on, we're going to talk about my number 2 bass player, and this is really a tie with Geddy Lee for me. This is Mr. Christopher Russell Edward Squire.
Born
March 4th, 1948. Deceased June 27th,
blood
2015.
Type, favorite color.
I will say this out loud and not be concerned at all, but I actually did shed a tear when I found out that Chris Squire died.
No, that's perfectly fine.
He meant a lot to me from a bass playing perspective, as well as just Yes Sir. I know there are rock guys out there listening to this right now like, Yes sucks. I love Yes. They're in my top 3. I've got Kiss, Rush, and Yes. Those are my top 3, always will be. And most of the reason that I love 2 of the bands, Rush and Yes, are because of the bass players. The bass playing is so amazing in all of the Yes music. Yes started in 1969 and has 21 studio albums, 18 live albums, and 37 compilations.
And for those of you who have never been to Kevin's basement music studio extraordinaire, there's a picture of him standing next to
Mr. Chris Squire.
Mr. Chris Squire.
It was so great. That was a big day.
Yeah, you were pretty happy.
Yeah, it was a big day for me. So he's known as much for his backing vocals in that band as his amazing bass playing. I mean, Yes,
they've got lots of harmonies all throughout a lot of their songs.
And he's the main driver on those harmonies. He is that high harmony that sings with John Anderson.
And he's a big dude to hit those. You wouldn't expect that.
He is a huge man. When I met him, the guy was in his 70s, I believe, and he's
a foot taller than you, and you're not exactly short.
Yeah, he's a big dude, and he is regarded as the dominant bass player among all those English progressive bands that came out in the early 70s. He is the one, even though there's a ton of, you've got Greg Lake, you've got John Wetton, you've got all these guys that were amazing. Chris Squire kind of stands above them all, and mostly because of his really unique sound. He's one of these guys that early on realized that he could run his bass, so he played a Rickenbacker for one, which at that time there weren't that many Rickenbackers in England. It's a California-made company. Rickenbacker's out of California.
Okay.
And there weren't that many in England, and he got one of the only ones at that time, and he ran it through not only a bass rig, but also a Marshall.
So early Lemmy.
Exactly. So Lemmy's the other one. When you think about the Rickenbacker, there are 3 bass players you think about.
Yep.
Lemmy, Chris Squire, and Geddy Lee.
And 2 out of the 3 run it through a Marshall stack.
Yeah, and 2 of those ran it through because the Rickenbacker has a really good high tone. So you get this great high, this great low, and especially if you run it through those amps. So if you're not a bass player, basically bassists usually run through a bass rig, right? It's a woofer. Just like on your stereo, you have your bass coming out of your woofers.
And the speakers are designed to handle that.
They're designed
low.
for those frequencies. And then your tweeters are what gives you the high end on your stereo. Same thing with guitar amps. Those are made to handle those higher frequencies, which a guitar has. And so you get all this mid-range and high out of these guitar amps with a bass going through it, and a Rickenbacker, for some reason, just works really well with that sound. And so he is basically the person that established that whole sound. So anyway, he's known as much for his proficiency in playing, but also the sounds and the tones, as well as his voice. So just all around pretty amazing musician. And he is the only person I'm going to play today that plays with a pick. He always played with a pick. I play with a pick because I started off on guitar, and that's just how I learned to play. And I found the attack on the bass for me was better with a pick than my fingers. I got real thuddy and duddy with my fingers, and I just didn't like that tone. And so I played with a pick as well, and I still do to this day. Now, what he did was interesting because you know what pinch harmonics are. Obviously, you play guitar. Do you do it with your thumb? How do you do a pinch harmonic?
Back my thumb.
Back of your thumb, right. So he is the person who sort of invented that. He plays his bass, or he played his bass with a really strong grip on the pick. He would not only hit it with the pick, but he'd also hit it with his thumb. And there's this very slight delay. And when you listen to his bass, that's how he gets that unique attack on the bass.
Interesting.
It's because it's like a double hit every time. So pretty interesting that he developed this own style. But he strikes the strings with the pick and the thumb at the same time.
And just draws out the ring a little bit more.
Yeah, so you get these really subtle harmonics that, players like Zakk Wylde and, those guys would exploit that later.
The king of pinch harmonics.
Yeah. The other thing he did was, if you think about Eddie Van Halen and Steve Hackett and some of these other guys, he also used hammer-ons and pull-offs on a bass, which wasn't really a thing. Those were guitar tricks, for these lead guys that do these hammer-ons and pull-offs, and he put that into his bass playing. So again, just unique, as well as back in the day, if you had if you listen to Jimi Hendrix back in the day in the 60s, early 70s, he may have been running 2 or 3 pedals, and he kind of started that. So he was the first one. He had that wah-wah going. He had some phasers and some different things going to get those weird, crazy Jimi Hendrix tones. Well, Chris Squire thought that was cool, and so he's one of the first guys on bass to set up all that stuff as well. So he also had a chorus, flanger, wah-wah, all sorts of stuff going through his bass that was just unheard of at the time. It became sort of the norm. So again, he's kind of a pioneer in bass playing.
I think it's when it gets into the realm of my favorite bass sounds, when they kind of play more like a guitar.
Yeah.
Because that's my wheelhouse.
Yep. And he played melodic bass. That's how he played. He can hold down the bottom and hold down the rhythm, but he always would do both. So he kind of lead on top of what he was holding down. Very unique. One of the reasons he's one of my favorites. So I'm obviously not going to play a Yes song. I'm not going to play anything from his couple of solo albums. He did some stuff with the guy that replaced him in Yes Now. So when he passed away, he handpicked his successor. Yes, thank you. And that's Billy Sherwood. He plays bass in Yes Now. And he did some albums with Billy Sherwood. They were good friends, where Billy Sherwood is this guy who can play any instrument, basically. And so they did a couple albums together. I'm not going to play from those albums. I am going to play from something that came out in 2012 with none other than ex-Genesis guitarist Steve Hackett. So it's Hackett and Squire together. They made one album. They just did it for fun, and it's called Squack It. I don't think they were looking to do much with this other than just
obviously
put out some
by that
fun
title,
music.
that tells you right there. They didn't give a rat's ass.
Exactly. So let's try a little Squack It from Mr. Chris Squire.
That's good stuff. Very reminiscent of like later Pink Floyd, not post Division Bell, like a lot of Richard Wright stuff. They just kind of, I don't say they didn't care, but they had no agenda. It was a lot of really, even for Pink Floyd, really mellow stuff. So that was really cool. I'm sure they had a good time doing that.
Yeah, I think it's more for, if you're listening to Chris Squire for the first time, that's more of his groove, more laid back kind of sound.
It wasn't as proggy as it could have been.
But you could hear that tone, and they did get proggy through the end there where they were doing some runs and things like that. Obviously, I'm not going to play a 13-minute Yes song. Here. We could. I mean, we
Owner of a Lonely Heart?
Well, and that probably had a similar tone to what he used on Owner of a Lonely Heart. That sounded kind of like that same setup where he's going more for a groove on his bass than that kind of lead sound. But I just thought it really represented his tone really well because you had those highs and those lows in that. So
you know how Foo Fighters have delved into disco. They did a disco album, and then
the DGs.
Well, then they did a complete Bee Gees cover too.
Yeah, the DGs.
The DGs. But there's some other stuff. So now they've announced they're going to do the most incredible prog rock album ever. So I cannot wait to hear this because they're not going to hold back. It's going to be the most noodly, over the top prog rock album ever recorded.
Did you ever hear the Dave Grohl song? I can't remember what it was called. It was either like Just Play or something like that. I can't remember, but it was one song. It took up an entire side of an album.
No, I haven't.
And it's him playing every single instrument. And go check this out. It's on YouTube. It was some sort of benefit, but I have the vinyl. It's been a while since I've listened to it, but it's him, and you watch the video, and he basically has 2 or 3 drum kits set up so he gets these different sounds, and he basically plays a beat and kind of loops it,
and then goes over to the
next thing, and then he does the same thing with bass, guitar, and he's playing everything, but he's obviously overdubbing and multi-tracking,
but still,
he's doing it in as real time as he can. It's really cool. It's a really cool watch.
He's such a talented son of a bitch.
He's a talented dude, and he's playing keys, he's doing guitar, he's doing bass.
I'll have to check that out.
It's really cool.
I've seen people do that on videos where they do a 3 or 4 minute song.
Right.
I'm always dubious as how much of that is actually live. Like, did they go back and how much editing did they do? I mean, it looks cool on the video, but in real life, how many takes did it take?
It might just be called play. I think.
You just hit play.
I could be wrong, something like that. But anyways, just Dave Grohl.
So we'll have to feature his most progressive rock album ever.
Hey, I welcome it. I remember when they did the induction of Rush. They were the band that inducted them.
Oh, God.
And they went out and they were wearing the jumpsuits from 2112. And they did the trio, and they basically played the whole Temples of Syrinx and 2112 to start the whole thing off. And then Rush is behind them and starts playing after they finish. It's really, really cool.
Okay.
If you haven't seen that, go
remind me to look that up. I want to see that.
That's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction of Rush. And it's the Foo Fighters play first.
That's got to be on YouTube. I'll go look it up.
It's great. It is. It's great. It is absolutely great. And also, Alex Lifeson does a speech where all he says is blah.
What?
He's taking the piss out of the music industry. So he's like blah 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 blah.
I'm sure by then he'd had a.
It goes on for like 5 minutes.
And furthermore, blah
blah blah blah blah blah blah blah blah.
Okay, I'll look that one up too.
Anyway, back to the bass players. So one of my earliest exposures to amazing bass playing was when I first got into punk rock. And I don't know about you, but even to this day, for people who are non-musicians, trying to explain when they're hearing something what the bass is kind of tricky for people that don't really know. They just see somebody standing there with a guitar. They don't understand that there's 2 different tones coming out and that there's 2 different things going on.
It's in between the guitar and the drums. You got to listen real quick.
A lot of people don't hear it. No. They don't understand. They feel it, but they don't really understand that they're hearing it. They think a guitar is a guitar, right? They understand what a guitar sounds like, but they don't really understand a bass. So that was kind of me when I first got into music. I didn't really understand.
Unfortunately, a lot of guitar players are that way still.
Yeah, exactly.
What? There's a bass here? I didn't know there was a bass in the room.
The White Stripes didn't even realize that they didn't have one.
They didn't need it, yeah.
So anyway, when I was first listening to punk rock, I didn't really understand myself until I heard this band, and then I got it. And the band I'm talking about is Suicidal Tendencies. And I don't know how he's done it, but Mike Murr, who is the singer for Suicidal Tendencies, he does a side project called Psycho Myco. He does a band called No Mercy. He has this other band called Infectious Grooves. I don't know how he's done it his entire career, but the man has always had the uncanny ability to pick the most amazing bass players of all time. Like, there's never been a bad player in any of those bands, and he's had had a bunch of them.
He's the bass whisperer.
He is the bass whisperer, man. I don't know how he does it. We covered Infectious Grooves in our very first Something Smells Funky. That was episode 15. And I wanted to play something that was heavy but funky at the same time. And that's exactly what Infectious Grooves are. So it's basically Suicidal, but a funk version of Suicidal.
Ooh.
And the guy that he got to play on those first several Infectious Grooves albums is this man that doesn't really need much of an introduction now because he happens to be the bass player for this band called Metallica. I'm talking about Robert Trujillo.
Ooh, that guy.
But when you hear him play Metallica, you don't quite understand what the man is capable of.
No, there's a reason he got the job, not just because he can fill in for Newstead.
Before Metallica, he played for Suicidal. He played on 4 Suicidal records. He played on 5 Infectious Groove albums. And, oh, by the way, he also played in Ozzy's band. And he actually, I think Sharon Osbourne made him re-record the bass parts on a couple of those early Ozzy albums so that they could get out of paying the original guys.
Oh.
Yeah,
whoa.
so there were versions of Diary of a Madman with Robert Trujillo playing bass.
Oh, that's
so they didn't have to pay Bob Daisley.
What did he do to piss off Sharon?
He wanted more money, I guess. He wanted his cut. But he also played with Jerry Cantrell. He's also played with Black Label Society. But you do not understand what Robert Trujillo is all about until you hear some Infectious Grooves. So I'm going to let you hear a little good for nothing. This is bass, man.
All right, if you have a hard time picking out the bass in that, Once
Exactly
again,
right.
I'll recommend some other podcasts for you.
The dude, I mean, you don't hear that in Metallica. Obviously,
No,
he plays
no.
some killer stuff in Metallica,
Yeah,
but
but not that.
that is wow.
I'd love to see the tablature for that. It's just smear across the page.
Oh man, dude's amazing.
I
Absolutely
love
amazing.
bass playing like that.
So let's talk about another one of these guys, and I'm just going to mention one product, and you'll know exactly who this is: potted meat.
It's been 2 hours since I had dinner. I'm almost there.
Who is the bass player who loves his potted meat, his deviled ham, both chicken and ham?
True. He goes both ways.
He goes both ways. Mr.
Yeah.
Billy Sheehan. Yes.
Sheehan.
So we've talked about Billy. It wasn't too long ago, actually.
We have talked with Billy.
We've talked with Billy.
Yes.
We discussed the.
Let's milk that as long as we can.
Yeah, why not? We had a picture with him.
Yep.
Yeah,
He owns and has devoured our potted meat.
that sounds
Our
weird.
branded potted
Our
meat.
branded potted meat, and was quite giddy about it.
Yes.
Yes, we're talking about the guy who's won multiple best rock bass player of all time awards and best lead bass, best guy who does chords and two-handed tapping. He's basically the Eddie Van Halen of bass guitar.
And now he's in your top 5. Yet another honor.
Absolutely.
Is it top 5 or top 10?
Oh no, definitely top 5.
Okay, top 5.
Definitely top 5.
I lost track.
And I saw him way back open for Rush. So if you're a bass player, you saw Billy open for
wow.
Geddy. You just got bass player's wet dream.
Yeah.
That, and I saw that twice.
Yeah,
2
cold
different
shower
tours.
after that.
Yeah, it was crazy. So played with David Lee Roth. That's where most people know him from. We played Talus a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
His first band out of Buffalo, and
Wait, was he just Billy Sheehan opening for Rush, or what band was it?
no, that was Mr. Big.
Oh,
Yeah,
Mr.
so-
Big. Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
lost
so
track.
2 albums with Roth, 2 albums with Talus, 2 albums with Roth, and then he did 9 albums with Mr. Big. Did you even know they had that many?
No, not that many.
He did. There was another project he had called Niacin, which is like kind of a jazzy, funky bass and Hammond organ thing he did. And he's done 8 albums with Niacin. He's done some solo stuff. He's done Winery Dogs, which is with Richie Kotzen and Mike Portnoy. Sons of Apollo, which is again with Portnoy and Derek Sherinian and Bumblefoot and Jeff Scott Soto. So he's just this amazing bass player. He's played with everyone and everybody knows who he is. But most people don't know his solo stuff. That's not, of all those things I just mentioned, the solo stuff is probably the most unknown and the most obscure. So that's where we're going to go. So let's hear a little Billy Sheehan from his album Cosmic Troubadour that came out in 2005. A little more proggy, probably leads the way to what he's doing now with Sons of Apollo, but badass Billy Sheehan. Here it is.
It's hard to define from within the chaos you find yourself in. Sometimes you give up and
All right, so the previous song we talked about the skills of that bass player, and the tone was like a snappy tone, but funky. It's got really tight, not a lot of reverb. This one was more of a rolling thunder.
Right.
It just rolled and just rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled. It just never stopped. I mean, just a driving bass line. That's an understatement for that song. I mean, that song, the bass line made that song. Of course, I'm sure, it was
built around it.
built
That's all
around
it
the
was.
bass line.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that just, with the laid back vocals, kind of just, more of a lyrical vocal.
Did you know he was a singer?
No.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't know he could sing like that.
You don't realize when you listen to Mr. Big, and I'm talking outside of the big hit that everybody knows,
Yeah.
but when you listen to Mr. Big, a lot of those background vocals, that's Billy. And a lot of the Talus stuff, that's Billy.
Yeah, I had no idea he was also a singer.
You can hear it when you listen to this stuff.
Damn good.
Amazing. The guy is amazing. So we met another bass player when we were at the Rockin' Pod Expo in Nashville, Tennessee, and this one was kind of random.
Yeah.
He kind of walked up
He
to
was
us.
lost.
And, well,
Hey, man, you know where the bar is?
so actually Brad introduced us.
Yeah, that's right.
He was talking to Brad, and I'm talking about a guy named Martin Motnick, and he is the bass player, the new bass player for Accept. So Accept is a German metal band that has been around for over 40 years, and for over 40 years they had the same bass player, Peter Baltus. Well, he retired or left Accept in 2018, and the guy that got to replace him is Martin Motnick, who we met. Again, we had a great conversation with him. He played the wild card game with us. If you've listened to that episode, you heard him. He was hilarious. Little did I know, I mean, obviously he's playing for Accept. Of course he's good.
Yeah.
But little did I know how good he is. The guy is a virtuoso. He's amazing. And so he reached out to me and said, "Hey, really had fun. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Hey, I'm doing this whole new album thing, and if you want to hear some of it, I'll let you hear a little bit of it."
No way.
Yeah, so he's given me a little early access to something that he's recording. And he's like, "Yeah, I've got some pretty big names playing with me on this. It's pretty cool what I'm doing." So this is his second solo album. So
I was waiting for you to go, yeah, but they couldn't show up. So, hey, do you want to come up and record with us?
well, no, I mean, because I'm a bass player too. He does not need me, that's for sure.
Well, I didn't know if they're going to do like the, Spinal Tap version, the bass chorus.
The bunch of basses. Yeah, so anyway, he's putting together this new album, and he's got some pretty amazing guys guesting on different songs. So he's got Joe Satriani on a song. He has Wolf Hoffman, obviously, from Accept on one of the songs. Bruce Kulick from Kiss. Derek Sherinian, who's a keyboard player we've already named, who was in Dream Theater and Sons of Apollo. Christopher Williams, who was another guy that we interviewed and talked to and had a lot of fun with at the Rockin' Pod. He's the drummer from Accept. And also Greg Bissonette, who played with David Lee Roth and Billy Sheehan in Roth's band. And just a whole bunch of other like jazz cats, a lot of jazz names. And his stuff is kind of in between like instrumental Satriani type jazz rock and more pure jazz, like more modern electric jazz.
So he was going in a vastly different direction than Accept. Just
Yeah,
kind of
so I mean,
palate
obviously
cleanser.
he's got a lot going on. There's even some songs that he's playing stand-up on. So he's playing traditional bass on it. And then he has one piece where it's just him solo doing a classical piece. And he's doing two-hand tapping so that he can play both parts.
Of course.
Amazing. So this thing is being crowdfunded. So I'm going to let everybody know when this comes out, the crowdfunding will still be going on. So it goes on until October 10th, 2021. So get out there and support Martin. Take a listen to this. We're going to play the song that he plays.
Are you going to provide a link?
I am. I'm going to provide a link, and I'm going to tell you right now, just go to www.motnik.com, which is Motnik. Check it out. You can see who he's playing with, and you can just go help fund it, man. It's really, really cool. And I am going to play a song that just happens to feature Mr. Joe Satriani. So this is the very first song, I believe, that's going to be on the album. He could change the order. It's not finished yet. He's still putting the final touches on it, but we're going to play.
You're going to send him some notes after we listen and maybe give him some feedback.
I'll give him a little,
I'll
give him
change
a
the mix a little
feedback,
bit.
Yeah. So here, maybe take Satriani out.
Yeah,
I don't
just
know
take
that he's
him
necessary.
down. Yeah, superfluous.
Yeah, so not only do you get Mr. Badass Martin Motnick playing multiple bass layers, so he's playing, the bass, he's holding down the rhythm, and he's doing like all these lead stuff, and then he just happens to bring in Joe Satriani in the middle of the song. So check it out. This is really cool.
All right, so when you talk to him and you give him the notes, definitely tell him that entrance into the lead, the guitar lead by Joe, was bullshit. Completely took me out of that song. He should have eased into that a little bit more. Just, walking up to your lady and just going for it. And every once in a while that may work, but sometimes they like to be warmed up a little bit. And that was the case.
Not subtle.
I was not subtle at all.
Yeah.
I would like to have been warmed up a little bit before he jumped in that squealing.
That's not the way Joe does it, man.
No, but he could have done it. He has the ability to do that. I've heard his leads before, and he's got some really beautiful leads that are melodic. And it was such a groovy
Well, he ended
song.
it very melodic.
He did.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. It was
he just jumps into
it just took me out of a very good place and put me in a bad place. And I didn't want to be in that place. I want to be back in the good place.
I thought it was all
and
good.
by the
to
time
me,
I got back to the good place, the song was over. So just tell him that. Tell him I said that.
I'll let him know. I'll let him know to get back to Joe.
Yeah,
And,
just tell Joe to
Joe,
go back.
you need a second take,
it's
buddy.
It's just like the first 10 bars of that lead. Go back and take it down about 3 notches. Then go all the way. I mean, don't take the whole thing down. Just the intro to the lead was a little abrupt.
I dug it. Whatever. I liked it. I hear you. Amazing use of layering of bass. I mean, he's that whole first half until Joe Satriani comes in. It's all Christopher Williams playing drums and Martin Motnick, 2 guys that we had a chat with not too long ago, and just killing it, man.
God, I remember, it reminds me of my first 4-track and trying to figure out how to use it. No instructions, just pushing buttons and turning knobs and, making layers. And that was just so cool. But this is way before they had loop pedals or anything like that. When you could just lay down a rhythm and then put another rhythm. And then at some point, you started bouncing tracks and it just started getting just a mash of crap. But, the first few times you did that, it was just like, God, this is the best song ever.
So the whole album is amazing. Again, the release date for this thing is November 10th of 21, but the campaign, the crowdfunding is on I think it's called Indiegogo, and that's going on until October 10th. Again, go to motnick.com, which is MOTNIK. I'll put it in the show notes as well, but if you go in and you do any funding of the album, you get a thank you as executive producer of the album. So you get your name in there.
Comes over and cooks dinner for you.
Yeah, you can get pre-release copies, you can get shirts, you can get all sorts of things, gold and platinum records, all sorts of stuff he's offering, depending on how much you want to give him.
Wash your car.
Really cool recording, and I wish the best
to
him
good.
on that. It's really cool
it did
stuff.
Sound good.
Very different, obviously, than Accept, but the man is multifaceted.
Yes.
And let's just go into the weird since we've started down this path. This next band, I don't really know what they are. They straddle jazz, rock, bluegrass, prog, and jammy stuff.
Definitely not Kiss.
It's definitely not Kiss. They
ripped off all of those, but they didn't straddle them.
Well, I mean, when you hear them, be like, well, I don't know what to call this, and I've never known what to call it, but I've always enjoyed it, and it features one of the baddest bass players ever to hold the instrument, Mr. Victor Wooten.
Ooh.
Now, have you ever heard of Victor Wooten?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Dude is
royalty.
Amazing. I've watched the guy play 2 basses at one time. I didn't even know that's a thing.
What is like a 2-neck bass or like 2 separate
No,
basses?
he had one on a stand. And then he was... Now, I believe Stanley Clark did this as well.
Okay.
Who was a jazz cat who kind of did all the fusion stuff. Oh, and by the way, Victor Wooten just happens to be in another band, not the one we're gonna play, but he's in another band which contains 3 virtuoso jazz players: Stanley Clark, Marcus Miller, and Victor Wooten. They're called SMV. I'm going to save you from that because that is like jazz fusion bass, like
hitting you in the face.
Make your head hurt.
Yeah,
it'll make
there's
your
a
head
lot
hurt.
of thinking involved.
It's crazy, but this guy is just a badass. And I saw this group 3 or 4 times in the early 90s. I haven't seen them since then, but they were amazing. The band I'm talking about is Bela Fleck and the Flecktones.
Yes.
And not only do they have one of the world's most badass bass players, but they have an electric banjo
Yeah, how
player
many electric banjos are there out there? There's not many. You could probably fit them in a very small minivan.
who doesn't just play bluegrass. He's like playing rock/jazz with his banjo.
Bluegrass.
And it's electric. And
Blue jazz.
He gets all these weird sounds out of it. And oh, by the way, they also have this guy who plays the synth axe drumitar. So they didn't have a drummer. They had a guy who had this homemade contraption that looked like a guitar and had buttons all over
Like
it.
a keytar.
Like a key. Well, it
Without
looked more.
the keys.
It looked more like a guitar than a keytar. It did.
Oh,
even.
okay.
It didn't have keys like a keyboard. It had buttons on it instead of where you would
triggers.
have the strings, and they were all triggers. And he was doing this in the early '90s. This is a kind of new thing.
Yeah.
And his name is Future Man. Now he is actually Victor Wooten's brother, but he's amazing. He plays all these.
Future Wooten.
Yeah, Future He plays all these amazing rhythms on this thing that's just handheld, and it sounds like crazy cool electric drums. Again, I don't really know how to label this group, but when you hear this song, you'll understand why I'm playing it on the bass episode today. Here is The Sinister Minister from Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, 1990.
I would love to have been at the very first conversation where somebody goes, "Hey, I'll start a band." Jazz band? Cool, yeah. I play banjo. I'm sorry, what?
I mean, how would you even describe what you just heard?
It's bailiff flag. I mean, that's always been that way because there's nobody else doing that.
Nobody sounds like that.
And I got to say, as far as, not just the uniqueness of playing banjo in a jazz band, his skills playing banjo. If you've never played banjo, which I have, those strings are strung pretty tight. And to get those many bends and noodliness of those strings, that's not easy to do. The same thing with the bass. I have played bass. I sucked so bad at it. I think we quickly decided that I was going to stay playing guitar. But you were talented and can play guitar, bass, and drums, and we were trying to trade up. But because of my lack of skills, we just stuck to me playing guitar. But those runs, the way that he made it seem so effortless is...
He's got... And if
I
you watch
know
him,
how hard it is.
If you watch him play, it's like he has spaghetti fingers. I have no idea how he does what he does.
Just going to... I mean, it's... You respect that talent. When you haven't even tried to pick up a bass yet, you can still respect it, but there's a different level when you've at least spent a half an hour trying to just play a rhythm on either one of those instruments.
Yeah. He holds down both. Like he does this amazing, holding down the bottom and then he'll just have all this stuff. Just like all these guys that we've played. Like they play around the rhythm that they're holding down. Whereas most bass players only focus on holding down.
Well, and with a guitar player, you can be a badass virtuoso and then just drop out until it's time for you to be a virtuoso.
You can kind of come in when
but
you want.
But with a bass player, you can't just quit.
No, you are the rhythm. You are holding down that bottom with the drums. You are that heartbeat with the drum. So I had to do it. We had to have representation, an ambassador from Japan. Because we've played a lot of Japanese music on this podcast, and
I'm sure I'm going to know them.
There's some badass bass players in these Japanese bands, and a lot of times...
Is it the dude with the kimono that looks like Uncle Fester?
Well, I was going to say, a lot of time, these amazing bass players, for some odd reason from Japan, are women. Oh. And it's like you have the smallest of the small people playing the biggest instrument. I don't even know how they do it with their hands. If you just think about the physical, the hand size of...
The frets are 3 inches apart.
Of a very tiny person. And I've seen these groups play live, and every time, I don't care what Japanese band I've seen at South by Southwest or wherever I've seen Japanese bands, the bass players are always badass. Like, they don't hold down the root notes. No, they're doing exactly what we've just been listening to, just crazy-ass runs and holding it down. And so I'm going to have a special ambassador, and her name is Kiyoshi. Now, a few years ago, Jeremy Zamora and I, who's been on the program before, he and I went to see Marty Friedman.
He was here sober one time, too.
He once. Yeah. So we went to see Marty Friedman. You may know that name. He was a guitarist in Megadeth for a lot of the 90s and played on some of their best albums.
And has the least rock and roll sounding name out of all the...
Mr. Friedman?
Yeah.
So anyway, Marty was a huge fan of just Japanese culture, and when he left Megadeth, he decided to move to Japan, and he still lives in Japan. And a few years ago, he put out a solo album, and he came to tour the States, and he brought his Japanese band with him. And Kiyoshi was his bass player. And I'll be honest with you, she stole the show from Marty Friedman. I mean, Marty's a badass. He is an amazing guitarist, but whenever she got her chance to step up and show what she could do, it was everybody's jaws were just on the floor, even lower than they were when Marty was playing his stuff. So I'm going to play something from her solo album. Now, what she does on her solo albums is it's all bass and drums, and she sings, but she doesn't add any other instrumentation. So she does everything, and most of it's no overdubs. And you can go watch a video of this song that we're playing, and you can just see her play this and sing it, and it's just amazing. So here is Kiyoshi from Kiyoshi 4. The name of the song is Warning. Go to YouTube and look up Warning by Kiyoshi. I'll put obviously how to spell it, I'll put it in the notes, but go check this out. She is a badass. 「
ん取り戻して
Man, those lyrics really spoke to me. It was deep. So I described Billy Sheehan's bass playing as rolling thunder during that particular song that we played. And this one was right off the bat, herd of buffalo, just thunderous herd of buffalo. Because I don't know how many bass lines were in that.
It's actually not that many.
Just two or three?
She just has a really, I think she's running in 2 amps, kind of like Chris Squire did, where she's running
that just makes it sound bigger.
Subs and into guitar
it sounded
amps.
Huge. But just, that was another one that just came at you. Like right at the very beginning, just started kicking you and punching you and didn't let up till the end of the song.
Oh yeah, that's the most aggressive song we've heard, and it's by this amazing tiny Asian Japanese lady
dynamo.
That's just a dynamo, man. She's amazing. Stole the show from Marty Friedman. No mistake.
Not many people can do that.
True. Yeah, I don't know if he would agree, but to me, I mean...
Well, let's invite him on the show. We'll talk about it. Marty, sorry I made fun of your name.
All right, I have one more song for you, and I cannot do a bass episode without mentioning this man who, for a lot of people our age, kind of redefined the instrument for the alternative generation of the 90s, and I'm talking about...
Not Michael Anthony.
No, it's not Michael Anthony. I love Michael Anthony's playing, man.
We talked about him a couple episodes ago, about the backing vocals. How
oh, my God.
He was a very unsung hero of Van Halen.
He is Van Halen, man. He is those backing vocals. But no, that's not who I'm talking about.
Okay.
I am talking about Mr. Les Claypool.
Oh, God. Yeah, how could we forget him?
How could you forget him? And I actually just saw Primus 3 weeks ago. I went to see them. First show I've seen after the pandemic.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, my nephew and I went.
Where were they playing?
The Roxy. Sold out at the Roxy. I had bought...
Right down the street from me?
Yeah, I had bought these tickets. It was sold out. I had bought these tickets almost 2 years ago.
Oh, they kept getting postponed?
And it kept getting postponed. And
the
reason that I wanted to go so badly is, well, originally the Sword were opening, which they still play. They were amazing. But also Wolf Mother was the second band. Now, Wolf Mother didn't make it. They didn't make it.
Yeah, because they had to come from lands far away.
Yeah, so they were not there. But also, Primus were playing Farewell to Kings by Rush from start to end. So they did a whole Primus set, and then they played the Rush album, Farewell to Kings, from start to finish. It was interesting. I'm not going to say it was amazing. It was interesting.
No. You're guaranteed interesting if Les is in the room.
Yeah, so most people, I think, know who Les Claypool is. They mostly know him for being that quirky leader of Primus, but also for just being this crazy bass man
who tried out for Metallica.
Yeah, and that's the other thing you might know, that he tried out for Metallica after Cliff Burton. Can you imagine him playing the style of bass that he plays in Metallica? It's like, never.
Yeah, I remember interviews and Hetfield's just like,
hey, James, I want you to play this song. It's called Jerry was a Race Car Driver.
Hetfield was like, I'm sorry, man. You're just amazing, but yeah, no.
So I don't want to play Primus, and I could have played his first band before Primus, which was Sausage, but I've decided not to play Sausage. I'm going to go with something else, and I thought we'd play a little Southern hard rock.
Okay.
All right, so this is a Southern hard rock and power trio started by two former members of the Allman Brothers.
I was saying, there's not a lot of Southern rock power trios. They always have like 8 people
usually,
on the stage.
Yeah. And in this day, this band does. But when they started, they were only 3 of them, and 2 of them came from the Allman Brothers. I'm talking about Mr. Warren Haynes and Mr. Alan Woody, who formed this band called Government Mule.
Government Mule.
They're still around to this day. I have seen them not too long ago as well, and they're still amazing. But Alan Woody died of a heroin overdose in 2000, and they went from being this power trio to kind of like, what are we going to do now? And I think they had just added a keyboard player, so now they're starting to build out that sort of Southern rock sound. But what they did was they decided to put together a kind of 2-volume album that featured Woody's favorite bass player friends. And so there's, I mean, just the who's who of bass players. You know, Jack Bruce from Cream is on it. John Entwistle from The Who is on it. Mike Watt, who's this amazing punk rock bass player. Les Claypool, Flea, Chris Squire of Yes is on it. I mean, it's just an amazing Government Mule album because it's featuring all these guys that have this very distinctive sound. So
what a good time capsule, because those Chris and others that aren't long for this world.
Yeah, well, of those guys,
more of that
Jack Bruce has passed away. Yeah. John Entwistle has passed away.
Oh, that's right. I forgot he did.
And Chris Squire of the guys I just mentioned.
They really did have that amazing time capsule.
Yeah. So here is from 2002. Here is the song that they did with Mr. Les Claypool. So Government Mule with Les Claypool.
This is going to be good.
And this song is called Greasy Granny's Gopher Gravy, Part 1.
driver past the old church line. Lives a hot gal, smells of stale wine. We call her Greasy Granny. She's a hopped up NorCal witch. She's a slapped down, cranked out, two-ball bitch. She's stonewashed denim if she's wearing a stitch. We love our Greasy Granny.
Get your gopher gravy from Greasy Granny. Separate your mind from your body.
Club. She's a cooking up a gravy in a clawfoot tub. Waiting in the kitchen, you can get a back rub from old Greasy Granny. Greasy Granny's gravy, it'll make you sing. It'll shrivel up your pecker, make a nostril sting. Right out your teeth and make your left ear ring. Good old Greasy Granny.
Get your gopher gravy from Greasy Granny. Separate your mind from your body. Get your gopher gravy from Greasy Granny. Separate your mind from your body. Get your gopher gravy from Greasy Granny. Separate your mind from your body.
Oh, God, I love that. And it's got to be great as a musician when Les Claypool walks in the room, straps on a bass. You know for damn sure you are not the most eclectic musician in that room. And it just frees up people that may be kind of, in a box and creatively have done the same thing. Warren, amazing musician. He's kind of known for kind of the same sound and leads that he does.
He's a bluesy player. Man.
Exactly. Amazing. But all of a sudden, standing, in the same room with him, he's like, oh, well, I can do this weird thing that would stand out like a sore thumb any other day of the week.
I'm going to use this pedal I've never used before.
We blow the dust off of it. I go back to my first trip to Burning Man. And before that, I always kind of knew I didn't fit in with, most crowds. But, I was able to mask that for the most part. But you go to someplace like that, and it's hard to out crazy people. But it's like, okay, I got to step up now. And, there's a few times that I did, not always, but there's some crazy sons of bitches out there. But it gives you that freedom to push your boundaries a little bit more. When you're the craziest one in the room, sometimes you're kind of holding back. I don't want to be too much, but like when somebody like Les walks in, it just gives you that creative freedom, that permission slip that you need.
Embrace your crazy.
Embrace it, man. Just roll with it.
But I don't know about you, but when I remember hearing Primus when I was a freshman, when I was introduced to them, and it was, fairly early on, I think second album for them. I didn't know about them the first album, but I just remember hearing them for the first time. And not long after that, I believe I heard them on Bill and Ted soundtrack or something like that in a movie. And it was just really trippy. And it kind of set the pace for a lot of bass players for the 90s to just explore more. I don't know. Primus was never, they were big, but they were never huge.
No, they were an acquired taste for the most part.
But they definitely influenced a lot of people to think outside of the box.
And I think the first one was Becky's Big Brown Beaver, was the first one that I heard.
No, Winona.
Winona. Did I say
That's
Becky?
it. Yeah, you
Yeah,
said
well, that's in
Becky.
the song, but it's Winona. In her
Winona's Big Brown
Yeah,
Beaver.
Becky and her
Yeah.
Big Brown. Anyway, Winona's large animal. And I thought it was kind of a one-off thing that this regular band had just done a weird song. Like they had
Oh,
inspiration.
no, that was their single.
Yeah. I was like, then all of a sudden I was like, oh, let me go look up another, because this was in the days where you couldn't just look up on the internets.
The
what this-
interwebs.
But yeah, once you get the album, you're like, holy crap, no, they're just like this all the time. And then Jerry's race and the race car driver.
Jerry was
all
a race car driver.
Yeah. And then I'm like, oh no, that's the way this
My
guy
name is Mud.
And then you start seeing videos and the weird shit on stage they're doing. And you're like, oh, okay.
My name's Tommy the Cat. I mean, just,
Where does it come from? That's gloriously bizarre and weird.
I love it.
I do
Absolutely
too.
love it.
You got to have people like that to
It
kind of
was
just
so much. I tell you, it was
break it
so
up.
much fun seeing them. Not only that being my first show, but just seeing them play those Primus songs. They played everything we just mentioned. They
Yeah.
played all of them. And
They
Too
didn't,
many
they, didn't,
puppies.
they didn't play Becky's Beaver.
No, they didn't play Becky's Beaver.
That was a different song.
And then to have them come back and play Rush, it was almost like I was okay with just the Primus stuff.
Yeah.
The Rush was just kind of the icing on the cake, but they're not Rush. They're Primus. and
Right.
So
But now you
it was
know
weird.
what would Rush sound like if Primus played it. Now you know.
Rush from another dimension.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is bass virtuosos, bass shredders, if you will.
Love it.
And there's a lot more that we could play. I know I hit on a lot of guys that everybody already knows, but hopefully I gave you some songs that you don't know or you don't remember.
No, we need to come back to this.
A little bit different,
There's a
so-
lot of good bass players out there.
There are, and I will listen to it all day long.
Before we go, got to give a shout out. Don't do this ever, but we have two new listeners
2 new listeners
that I have found out about recently.
All right.
First one you met 20-something years ago. Name's Frank Harrison. So on our way back from Illinois, we were driving around Illinois and St. Louis playing some shows up there. And on the way back, we stopped in Chattanooga and had dinner with my cousin, Frank Harrison.
Mm-hmm.
So you met him then. It's been a long time, but I recently heard from him. And now he has a daughter that is 21 and is moving to Smyrna for a job. And so he's all worried about his daughter moving to...
Wait, so he called you to take care of his daughter?
Well, like
Frank, rethink
not
this.
taking care of, but
Okay.
like doing some scouting. Like, okay, what's it like there?
okay,
Is
okay.
it safe? And I'm like, yeah, it's perfectly fine. We're like Mayberry here. It's great. So we're working that out. Hopefully, she can get a good job here and start a new life here in the big city of Smyrna,
Just like we
Georgia.
did
Just
10
like we
years
did.
ago.
Yeah, 10 something years ago. So Frankie and I were roommates in college, if you don't remember. So
Yep.
like all the really good, funny stories of me in college, which, that was about half. The rest of it was just horrible crap went through in college. But the really funny stuff, he was involved. So really good friend, cousin, relative, all that good stuff. And then the second one is Joseph Tarabella, who is my nephew.
He actually listens to you?
He said, I talked to him a few days ago, and he mentioned that he's been listening to some of our episodes. So if he catches up to this episode and he's listening, makes me really happy because he's a really talented guitar player. He's 20-something, in his early 20s. I've lost track now. He's like 6'2". I can't beat him up anymore.
Yeah, he's always going to be 5 to you.
Yeah,
but-
exactly. He's a little Joseph that shot the arrow straight up in the air that came down on the hood of my 6-month-old Dodge Charger that had a dent in the hood for about 2 years until I fixed it. But no, he plays guitar better than I ever did and is just a natural at it. And I hope he keeps at it. Then he can pad that talent with some knowledge of history.
Yeah, we're giving you
Musical
all the history you need.
Yeah, so I'm really proud of him for listening to us.
And put a band together and then go for one of these types of bass players and you'll be set.
Exactly. Go find, we can put him in touch with Billy.
Oh, yeah, we'll
He's
just
sitting
hook you
around-
with Billy.
Sitting around eating pot of
Yeah,
meat,
yeah.
doing nothing. So that's cool to hear some family names in here.
It's a family affair now. All right. Well, until next time, hopefully this episode 94 actually gets out to the masses. We'll see. I'll try not to have my stuff stolen.
And we're going to stand here
we're gonna save
and
it.
watch you upload this to the cloud.
Yes.
And then you leave.
Yes, it'll be in the cloud.
Okay.
Later, peeps.
See ya. Peppers.